The Miami Hurricanes are very much in the mix for this top South Florida recruit. Could he be the next Travis Hunter?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to talk on this episode about the biggest obstacles Miami is going to face within the ACC next season. Because remember, if you want to make the CFP, you've got to at least get to the ACC championship game. Miami fell just short of that this past year. And in order to get there, your roster needs to be complete and revamped after last season. We'll talk about where Miami stands on that front. We'll talk some recruiting as it's a pleasure to bring in very good friend of the show. Does an awesome job. He's the publisher at Canes County at Rivals. He was out watching Battle 7-on-7 this past weekend. And Marcus Benjamin, first player I've got to talk about with you because you did a compelling interview with this guy. When we talk about Derrek Cooper, five-star athlete out of Chaminade, Madonna. As I've spoken with recruiting analysts on this show before, Marcus, I'm often asking, hey, like, which position do you think Derrek Cooper should play at the next level? Running back, linebacker, safety? Maybe the question is not which position he should play, but which positions he should play, because he told you he'd like to go both ways.
Yeah, he did definitely tell me that. He plays both ways at Chaminade, Madonna. And he plays it at a high level, just like, Travis Hunter did in this past year, winning the Heisman. I'm not necessarily saying he's the next Travis Hunter, but he could be. He definitely could be, just because he plays both positions at a very, very high level, running back and safety. He's really explosive, can break tackles, is really shifty when he has the ball in his hands. And at safety, he can cover in space, he can diagnose passes, and he's fast to the football. So I think he definitely has a chance to do so. The question is, will the Miami Hurricanes allow him to do so if he does indeed commit to Miami? There are some other teams in the mix, of course, trying to get his commitment. Ohio State and Georgia are two teams that I think are teams to watch for his recruitment along with Miami, but he continues to come to the University of Miami for visits. He continues to build a relationship with Mario Cristobal and the staff. So I definitely think there's a possibility. I think he's one of the best athletes he's probably the best athlete, since Jeremiah Smith,
Yeah.
who we just to come out of South Florida, who we just saw win a national championship last night and contribute, much in that game. So I think he could be that type of athlete, and Miami needs to do everything they can to keep him home.
Yeah, and of course, the other name you mentioned is one that every Miami fan is like, how did we let Jeremiah Smith get out of South Florida? I mean, Derrek Cooper, he's the next of that mold, like you said. I mean, and
Yeah.
so familiar high school as well down here. You got to keep this young man home. I mean, 6'1", 200 pounds. Now, Marcus, I don't know. Like, do you feel like Miami would or should let him play two ways if he does end up being a Hurricane? And heck, that might be what he's looking for in his college destination. He may want to commit somewhere where they tell him, yeah, we'll let you play offense and defense.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think if you run into any depth issues, which we kind of saw last season in secondary, then I don't see why you don't play a guy like him at safety or running back. Other players have kind of, like we mentioned, Hunter in the past. There was a linebacker for UCLA who kind of did it a while back as well. And I think if you limited his carries at running back, I think he can be effective. And at safety, I think that's more of a full-time type of position. Running back, of course, usually nowadays is running back by committee. There's the days of having a running back just totally just carry the load as far as carries are concerned are out the window. Last season we saw Mark Fletcher, we saw Jordan Lyle, and Damian Martinez carry a lot of the football. So I don't see him, doing that much damage to his body if he plays running back, with limited carries. I would limit him to maybe, 5, 6 carries or something like that a game. That's what I would want to see. But would they? That's a big question, because from what I hear, they are recruiting him for both sides of the football. Back when Guidry was around, and Jackson as well, they were definitely recruiting him to do that. And from what I hear, Heatherman is open for that as well. They really like him as an athlete overall. And of course, Merritt loves him at running back as well. So I think there's definitely a chance that Miami plays both. But, first, you got to get the commitment first from him to really see if that's going to be a possibility.
100%. And you, of course, you talked to dozens, if not hundreds, of other top recruits over this past weekend. Who are some other top players that you feel Miami is very much in the mix for heading into this 2026 recruiting cycle?
Yeah, there's a ton of guys. First, I'd want to say Javari Flowers. This guy was probably one of the best corners at Battle, 7-on-7, if not the best. He's just very, very crafty. Great speed, great recovery speed, and can get physical too. At the point of attack when it comes to the football in the air. So I really like Miami's chances for Javari Flowers. He was, of course, back on campus last weekend amidst, a bunch of other, I would say maybe close to 100 kids kind of, went through South Florida or went through Coral Gables over the weekend. So I think he had a chance to really kind of bond with Coach Heatherman. I think that was really kind of the thing this weekend, especially for the defensive guys, for the Miami DC to really kind of get familiar with a lot of the recruits. You really kind of felt that this weekend. So I think Javari Flowers is on maybe a similar path of Amari Wallace's recruitment last year. Is very kind of similar feeling of those two. So I think Miami is in a really good spot to get a Javari Flowers out of Miami Northwestern. Of course, that's the school that Cameron Kinchens went to, and the relationship between Miami and Flowers continues with Roland Smith. Roland Smith, of course, former Miami Central, former Miami Northwestern high school head coach, is now a staffer at the U. He has kind of maintained the contact with the Javari Flowers with the departure of, Chevis Jackson leaving. So, kudos to him if he indeed does end up signing with Miami. Other players I think Miami is in a good spot for is Jalen Waters, the Florida Gator commit. I think Miami is going to be in this one all the way until the very end. I really feel like his family probably favors him going to Miami, and he's solid with his official visits as well. FSU, LSU, Miami, and of course Florida already has those official visits kind of locked down. But every time he kind of talks about the Hurricanes, he raves about them. His face kind of lights up. So I really think Miami's in that one till the very end. That's another very crafty defensive back out of Armwood as well. The same school that landed signees Gerard Pringle and Kevin Wiley. So Miami kind of building a little pipeline from Armwood to the U here if they can indeed get Jalen Waters on board. I think that's going to be a long game. Maybe he commits or flips. This is a guy who actually flipped from Florida State to Florida.
Right.
So he may do the trifecta here. So we'll see what happens after his OVs in the summer. Very interested to kind of see where he lands. Samarian Wingo, I think Miami has a really great chance to land him as well. The crafty wide receiver out of St. Augustine. I think Miami is in a really good spot for him. I think he is a good size kid. I think he's a really good route runner as well. I think Miami has a decent chance at him. Karan Maycock, keep that Miami Central pipeline going. Ezekiel Marcelin is who is a Miami signee, is playing a really big part in his recruitment as well. So I think that is a big possibility for Miami to land a Karan Maycock. Another guy I think Miami should maybe push a little harder for is Larry Miles. This is a wide receiver out of Jones. If you saw social media at all on Sunday, you saw how Dereon Coleman, the quarterback for the Miami commit quarterback for 2026, kind of lit it up at Battle Miami, winning the MVP, winning the tournament championship for DEF CON. But his go-to receiver was Larry Miles. And, of course, they have chemistry at Jones. They go to the same high school, Orlando Jones. They made the state title game last season. Came up just short against American Heritage, against, of course, Malachi Toney, another Miami signee. But I really like Larry Miles. I think he has great body control. Dereon Coleman played with the flu yesterday.
I saw that on your interview. I didn't know that till I saw Marcus's content.
Yeah, he played with the flu, and so did Larry Miles. Larry Miles also had the flu as well. So they weren't feeling too good, but you couldn't tell on the field because both were really dynamic. Yeah, I mean, Miles, especially in that title game against Tucson Turf, who notoriously is always really good when it comes to 7-on-7. He made some really tough catches, was able to kind of get open a lot. So I like Miami's chances there. He is leaning towards more of a June commitment. So I expect Miami to be in the race for Larry Miles as well. Chancellor Barclay, offensive lineman out of Florida. I think Miami has a really good chance for him. I think he is kind of an Alex Mirabal guy. Like when you talk to offensive linemen for the past couple of cycles, these guys have really good heads on their shoulders, really smart, technically sound. That's a guy I think Miami has a really good chance to land, just because of Miami's experience with developing offensive linemen. So look out for him as well. I think Miami is in a really good spot for a Chancellor Barclay, who I think can just improve his game and really kind of improve his rating over rivals. I think Miami's in a good spot with Aiden Pouncey. Everybody kind of hears that name and kind of thinks about the Pouncey brothers, and so they may think, okay, he's going to commit to Florida because that's where the Twins went. But I think Miami's in a really good spot for him. He didn't play during battle due to an injury, but I think Miami has a really good spot for him. Defensive back, 4-star. So I think he has a really good chance to probably commit to Miami. Always raves about the Canes as well. I expect Miami to have a few commits in the next month or so.
Ooh, well, this is tremendous info. Got more than we bargained for with this info from Marcus Benjamin. And we're not done yet because I want to get Marcus's take on the roster that's going to be heading into spring football, heading into the 2025 season, and what Miami still needs, because they've done a lot of work finding their quarterback, finding a ton of defensive backs, with Xavier Lucas recently hopping on board, and all the controversy that came with that. But he's here, which is the most important thing. But what does Miami still need? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. So the college season may be over. You took my advice and you had Ohio State minus 8.5. You're counting your money this morning. You're welcome. And the NFL is not over yet. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps everything exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to make some extra excitement during the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're joined by publisher at canescounty.com. Marcus Benjamin is with us. So, Marcus, I want to circle back to Carson Beck with you because I realize I haven't had you on the show since Miami added their quarterback, but we zoom out and take a look at the roster. Miami found their quarterback for this year. Miami has obviously done a ton of work in the defensive backfield, with Xavier Lucas being the most recent addition. Miami found their center for next year, their tight end for next year, a defensive tackle. How do you feel they've done so far with the roster overhaul, and what holes do you think are still there that need to be filled before the 2025 season?
Yeah, let's start with Carson Beck. I mean, it was a great acquisition for Miami. I think it keeps Miami relevant, as far as the national scene is concerned. Everybody kind of knows Carson Beck because, Georgia is always a contender year after year. And, this guy, of course, Florida guy, I watched this guy win a state championship against Columbus a few years back. I was very impressed with him then. I was always excited to see what he would do on the college level. And he's impressed for the last 2 seasons, leading Georgia to, I believe, a 24-3 record. So really impressive. I think he is not Cam Ward, though. No, let's just put that out there. And he's going to have very high expectations kind of going into the season just because you're following Cam Ward. So I think that's a little scary for him. And then the fact that he's not healthy, he has an injury to his arm and likely will not be available for spring. I think that's a little critical because you're a new quarterback. You're trying to get familiar with your receivers and develop that chemistry, and you probably won't be able to do that until the summertime. So I think that does put Miami behind the 8 ball when you kind of look at his injury status or his health status. So I'm a little worried about that. And Georgia, I think, took a somewhat of a step back, I guess you could say. It's hard to say a team took a step back when they won the SEC. But yeah, it feels that way.
Well, yeah, I agree with you because listen, obviously they had a lot of success on the field, but at the same time, their offensive line did not look as good, and the statistics were not as good. The running game was not nearly as good statistically, and their receivers had more drops, I think, than anyone else in the country. So, in those aspects, they took a step back.
Right, exactly. And if you look back just how Cam Ward or the narrative surrounding Cam Ward going in to the 2024 season, it was kind of similar, right? He didn't have a great offensive line at Washington State, didn't have the best playmakers as well at Washington State, but came down here and really flourished. So I'm optimistic about Carson Beck, but I'm cautiously optimistic because at times he does make some bad decisions, with the football. I believe he had 20 interceptions last season or within the last 2 seasons,
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah, so I think, he has a chance to really improve his stock. I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, there's maybe millions of reasons why he returned back to college football. But I think one of the reasons is definitely the opportunity to be developed under Shannon Dawson. And because of what he saw with Cam Ward, because let's be honest, if Cam Ward doesn't come to Miami, he's not going to be the first pick taken in the draft or second. It's either him or Shedeur Sanders. So I think Beck sees that opportunity, and I think the offense will be an offense that he can thrive in. I think he can thrive in this offense and really kind of take over. The question for me, I think with Beck is like, can he take over the locker room? Because Cam Ward did an amazing job of that. He did an amazing job of really kind of commanding the offense, as well as just being a leader for the team. So I question that a little bit about Carson Beck, just from his personality. I don't really see that yet. Maybe we'll see that, once the season starts. But, that's probably the only thing that I really kind of question. As far as the rest of the team, as far as transfers are concerned, I think Miami did really well as far as the secondary. They really addressed the secondary tremendously, especially getting Xavier Lucas here. We'll see how that controversy kind of, unfolds here as that story continues to develop. But I loved Lucas like in high school, and I wanted Miami to get him really bad in the previous cycle. He and OJ Frederick trained together under the same coach, Coach Strong down here in Fort Lauderdale. So they have very similar games to each other. So if you liked OJ Frederick from last season, you are going to love Xavier Lucas, because a lot of people would say that Xavier Lucas is better than OJ Frederick coming out of high school. I just think he's maybe a little bit more physical corner. I think OJ is just really smart and always in the right position. But I think Xavier Lucas may have a higher upside. And to have both of those guys on both sides there, and then you have maybe a Charles Brantley playing the nickel corner. You have Ethan O'Connor, who I'm really impressed with as well. You still have, Zaquan Patterson, at safety as well. And I think Miami really just, addressed the needs in the secondary. The positions where I'm a little worried about, though, is wide receiver. First and foremost, when you lose your top 4 wide receivers, from the previous year, that's a cause for concern. Definitely an opportunity for JoJo Trader and Ray Joseph and Nye Carr, Chance Robinson, these guys to really kind of step up, as well as freshman Josh Moore, Dalen Upshaw, and Malachi Toney to really kind of show what they can do right off the bat, in spring and then also in the summer as well. But CJ Daniels, from what I hear, may not be ready for spring. So due to an injury. So I'm not absolutely sure, but there is a concern there. So I think they do need to add another receiver. I really do. I really do feel like they should add one more wide receiver to this mix, preferably of the 6'3" variety, because Miami doesn't really have really big receivers, especially with the departure of Isaiah Horton now. I think they could do themselves, some favors by getting another wide receiver, and then, maybe a linebacker as well. I think Miami should, just add another player at linebacker. We're still kind of waiting to see, what this linebacker situation is, for next season. But there were some issues, last season with tackling and just being in the right position and getting beat on wheel routes and that kind of thing. So I would like to see Miami add another linebacker as well. The one position I think Miami is really solid in is defensive end. I think you can roll with the talent that you have, to be honest, because you got talent like Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor is returning. I really like the pickup that they got from the transfer portal as well, a D tackle, as well as you got players like Cole McConaughey, Marquise Lightfoot, Armando Blunt, Justin Scott, Ahmad Moten. I think I think you have enough there at defensive line to really kind of roll with the 2025 season. Now, if there's a big splash guy, though, that kind of appears in the spring, Cristobal won't be hesitant to try to get that type of guy like a Tyler Barron or Simeon Barrow of last spring cycle or spring transfer cycle. So I wouldn't be surprised there. But yeah, I would say definitely wide receiver and linebacker I think are the positions that are desperately needed to address. But if one of those big splash guys at D tackle or DN, jumps in the portal, then I think Miami should take advantage of it.
Oh, good stuff here. And when we come back, let's talk about Miami's chances and their odds of winning the ACC this coming season. We haven't done that for those who are paying attention. Florida State fans remind me of that every single day that Miami has not won the ACC. So are the Hurricanes in position to maybe finally do that this coming year? You want to keep it locked. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, I'm so happy the Prize Picks is with us here on the Locked On Network. I have been playing Prize Picks, which is daily fantasy made easy. I've been playing since 2021, and I will keep playing forever because Prize Picks is the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game at daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all of the football action. Yeah, it's playoff time now. There's no better way to get in than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply select more or less on at least two players on their stat projections. And if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. It takes me less than 60 seconds to make my picks. And I love how on any given selection, I can have two NFL players, two NHL players, two NBA players on the same selection. You can go cross league and cross sport with it, which is awesome. And with Prize Picks Flex Play, you can still double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. I'm very proud I could be part of the team at canescounty.com. Marcus Benjamin is the publisher of that site. It's Miami's Rivals affiliate. And guys, by the way, make sure after making Locked On Canes your first listen today, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you around the conference. Like this show, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So, Marcus, I was looking at way too early national championship odds for next year. And they give Miami the second highest odds among the ACC teams to win the title. Clemson, and I think deservedly, are the team in the ACC with the top odds. They return Cade Klubnik. Their defense was young this year, going to be more experienced next year. They made a good hire at defensive coordinator. I think Miami did as well, but Tom Allen, now they're DC over there. So Clemson are favorites, within the ACC to win the title, but they give Miami the second highest odds, Marcus, at plus 4,000 odds. Clemson is plus 1,800. Do you feel Miami has the type of team that can, you would think if you at least come in second place in the ACC, you're probably making that college football playoff this year. Can they do it?
They certainly can. And as I mentioned before with Carson Beck, I think he has an opportunity to really kind of develop into an even better quarterback that than he's been in the last 2 years. So I think it all kind of starts at quarterback. You mentioned Cade Klubnik. I think he's gradually progressed every season. So I think Clemson should be probably the favorite. At some point, Cade Klubnik was in the Heisman conversation. So I think he definitely has the ability. You just want to see the consistency if you're a Clemson fan, for sure. So I understand why Clemson is the favorite. I mean, they've kind of run the ACC, for the past few years. And in a down year last year, they win the ACC, so I wouldn't doubt if that happened again. And I totally understand that. Some other teams that I think that Miami should be concerned with, though, is Louisville. I think Louisville is going to be very strong the next season. They picked up the quarterback from USC in Miller Moss. I think he is a decent replacement for Tyler Show, and I think they keep a lot of players from last season, including a Stanquan Clark, who's from down here, who I think has a chance to be one of the best linebackers in the ACC next season. They'll return Chris Bell and also another South Florida guy, and Isaac Brown, who kind of also lit it up last season. Also a South Florida guy out of Homestead. So I think they definitely have a chance to really kind of contend for the ACC. And the other team is the Fighting Lashleys, man. You don't count those guys out either, or you could say the transfer Canes. You can call them that as well. And now they do lose a lot of those former Canes, like Brashard Smith. They lose a Keyshawn Smith. They lose Elijah Roberts. They lose Jared Harrison Hunt. So all those former Canes won't be with SMU next season. But guess who will be? TVD.
Johnson. No, TVD. Yeah, well, TVD and CJ Chris Johnson's going to be there as well.
Right, exactly. So it's TVD back with Rhett Lashley. When he was with Rhett Lashley, that's when he kind of lit it up. I believe it was the 2021 season. So I think he has a chance to return back to form if he stays healthy. I think that's always been kind of the question with Tyler Van Dyke. I mean, there's been other questions with him, let's be honest, as far as like securing the football consistently. But I think SMU has a chance to make another run, and just because I think Lashley is a really good coach, and I think he has a chance to really kind of, develop guys. And, the fact that SMU kind of jumped into the league last year and made the ACC championship game really kind of tells you his prowess as a coach and a developer, because these guys, most of these guys are transfer guys, that, weren't performing I guess at the highest level at their previous school. And he was able to get the most out of a lot of players, including Brashard Smith, who's one of the best running backs in the ACC last season. So I think those are really kind of the teams to really be concerned with: the Louisvilles, the SMUs, and the Clemsons. But I think Miami has a really good shot here. I think if Carson Beck can develop chemistry with, these are all new receivers. A lot of these receivers don't have a lot of experience, so I am worried about that part. But if that can be changed or fixed, fast in the summer, then I think Miami has a decent chance, because Carson Beck can be a quarterback that can lead you to an ACC championship.
That's well said. And by the way, with those top contenders for Miami that Marcus mentioned, Clemson is not on Miami's schedule next season, which is a good thing for Miami. But you do have the other teams he brought up. Miami will be home against Louisville this coming year, and will play SMU in Dallas. To be determined dates on those two games. But Miami does have a couple of those teams on the schedule. Marcus, I can't thank you enough for your time and for all the insight. You want to make sure you follow him on X at Benjamin Rivals. Marcus, thank you so much, and keep up the great work at CanesCounty.com.
My pleasure, Donno. Anytime.
We love it. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button, subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.